like what I know about you and all that comes from your book.
Yeah, that's funny. It's a good way of putting it.
Because, well, one of the things that I really liked about your book is how raw it is. And we were talking off mic a minute ago about how you were saying that you thought maybe some people thought that they thought it was too raw or they weren't ready for it.
Yeah, I get that a lot. There was just somebody on Twitter put, it's kind of like I Google myself sometimes. Somebody put on Twitter, somebody asked, who's your favorite poet? Mm-hmm. And then somebody said Rumi. Somebody said Yeats. And then somebody said, have you ever heard of Ron Riekki? And they said, but he's really snarky. So it was funny. And then I looked up snarky because it's not a word I ever use. Uh-huh. And I was like, it's kind of a compliment and an insult all wrapped together. But I was like, and I so wanted to tweet back something about, I like Rumi, but he's a little too snarky for me, but I kept myself kind. But I was just, I don't know. I was just amazed that somebody even knew who I was at all. But
and that they listed you as a favorite poet too. So
but I think it's because what I do is like this really raw stuff that I've had people tell me things like that, like they hate poetry, but they like my poetry, and I'll say why, and it's like because you don't write like the majority of poetry out there. But in the book, I kind of rant about that too, like.
Yeah.
Nature poetry has its place, but like, holy Lord, some people, it's like, seriously, you're that into birds, seriously.
We actually published somebody who's that into birds.
Which I don't mind. I love birds too. My girlfriend today was talking about how we walked outside and she was like, oh, listen to the birds. It's gonna be, I swear to God, she was just saying that. So yeah, no, it's got its place too, but oh my Lord, some people are just like, I know you got stuff going on in your life that you're not letting your guard down and let me know about. Like, I want to hear that. Yeah. I mean, I like the birds too, but come on, what's really going on in your life right now?
Well, and that particular poet, he also parlays it into a way that it's not just a nature poem. Like he does a lot of equates it with politics and like talked about the border wall in relation to. No,
he's making it more complex.
Exactly, yeah.
But even like there's this guy, not to pick, like I think Keith Taylor is this guy. He heads the undergrad program at University of Michigan. Mm-hmm. He's got a book, The Bird While, and it's just about birds, but it's a good book. And he's like kind of like this. I called him one time Santa Claus, and he did not like it. But that's what he's like, There's just certain people out there who just are like just really freaking warm-hearted people who. But I'm sure there's things going bad in his life too. But he tends to. I don't know, like Rumi. I do. There's certain people who are when they're really soft. Like that's not the life that. Go work in a prison for a few months and then see if you're still writing bird poems. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, everything shifts a little bit.
Except it'll be like the Birdman of Alcatraz, right?
Yeah, it's like like let me give you a perfect example. Like last week, I think I can say this because I'm not saying names or anything, but I work in medical, and so it's the first time that I saw live a decapitated body, and so it's and so it's like as soon as you see that, like I know that's going to be appearing in my writing. Not now because it just it's like a week ago.
It's got to filter through.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's pretty intense. This is where it's just like I don't know. We were talking about visuals and imagery and stuff. Like the life that I've led has just got some of the most intense imagery ever. So it's like,
Well, and that's one of the things that drew me to the book. And I'm curious. And I think I've actually like said this to you through email. Was it doesn't seem like you ever sleep. Like you're just always doing something.
Yeah.
And there's like so what I find like interesting too is that there's this almost like this thing that weaves through, right? You seem like somebody who would who is anti-establishment, and also just as far as
why do you say that?
Well, okay, so as you're writing about looking, it's specific to the essay about visiting writers programs.
Yeah, I gotta go off on that one. I think that one's pissed some people off.
And I think that's understandable, right? Like if you actually have, instead of, it's like these people, the tenure track jobs, and the people that get these tenure track jobs, and the people that, you know, the kind of people that play into that. And we were talking earlier about how I tend to either shy away from or just outwardly reject something that's just overtly elitist and academic.
I just got to interject. I have a poem called "This is the poem that's going to get me out of the mines." You would love it because it's like that's about exactly what you're talking about right now.
It's just, you know, I think that I believe, and one of the reasons that I do the show is because I think that the arts and creative process and, you know, all of that should be accessible and available to everybody, and nobody should have a market cornered on it.
Well, the problem I have is with these visiting writer series is a lot of times they're inviting people to come read who don't need the money at all.
Yeah.
You know, and like, if say you're going to pay somebody, and I've seen some of these fees, by the way, say you're going to pay somebody $15,000, you know, have one poet that you also invite, maybe pay them $14,500, and you give somebody who's like struggling to survive $500, and they get to read with this, you know, whatever prize winning author, and then you get to like be.
Well, yeah, it's not going to hurt the other person. No, it's going to really help.
They're already making so much freaking money anyway. But the other thing is, can you try a little bit harder to hunt down people? There's a lot of people out there who are struggling, who are incredible, and I know names. If somebody's out there has a program and you're like who, then contact me and I can email you some people who are very, very freaking talented. But guess what? They don't have the creative writing job. It's too many of these visiting writer series. They just exchange somebody from their program with somebody that they know at the other program. Hey, they're buddies, and then they swap. And like, that's not what it's supposed to be about. This is supposed to be about really showcasing vital writing out there, and I'm sorry to tell you, but not all, but a lot of these people who are teaching at these programs, I've read their books, and they're just there's no energy to it because they're getting $70,000 a year to teach a few classes, and they don't know, they're not.
What kind of struggle do they have to write about?
Or not only that, they're too afraid about to write about the struggle that they are having. They say they are going through a divorce and they just cheated on their wife. Now they can't write about that because it's going to get read by the students and their fellow teachers. So they have to write really safe, protective, guarded, mediocre books. And that's why I like sometimes you get tenure track teachers. I got tenure now. Guess what? Write any damn thing I want. So I think tenure is a pretty good thing. You get somebody that now I can just write. But the people who are trying to get tenure, it's pretty rare you're going to have someone who's being really politically active or something like that, because they can't. They're too handcuffed. They're too afraid, you know. So anytime I have somebody who's doing a visiting writer series where it feels like it's an authentic visiting writer series, oh my Lord, you know. Just to keep ranting right now, might as well. But sometimes they say, well, we want to have diversity with them too. I never see them inviting Native American. I never see indigenous authors getting invited to those series. They talk a lot about diversity. I look at all the time on these visiting writer series. I am not seeing any, maybe a token one every once in a while, but I do not see indigenous authors getting invited to those things. So just an FYI, if there's people out there who do have creative writing series, just think about that. Just think about, because a lot of these indigenous authors, a lot of these Native American authors, and indigenous as a whole, coming from pretty poor areas. You know, I know a poet. Maybe I won't say her name. Maybe I'll say it later. I'll just weave it in. But she can't go to events because she doesn't have a car. You know, she doesn't have anywhere way to get there. She doesn't have the money to get there. Incredible poet. I'm talking about freaking beautiful poetry, beautifully important poetry. But she freaking doesn't even have a car. She doesn't have money for gas. She doesn't. You know what I mean? That type of stuff pisses me off. That's where I wish I had the power that you have. And a lot of these people that are in creative writing programs, they got a lot of power to them, and they just don't do anything. They should be way more active. Yeah. And if we could put some struggle in their life, that maybe wake them up of trying to really make some changes. But the thing I like is the things what you're doing now, podcast, your own publishing company. That gives, and it's like me when I do anthologies, then I get to pick who am I going to put in those authors, and so that's where I'm going to get somebody like that author I'm talking about right now. Yeah, showcase the hell out of her. Why? Yeah. She's freaking talented.
Well, and that's the whole impetus behind all of this is that, you know, to give a space for people who are not writing the status quo stuff. Yeah, you know, it's got to be something that excites something in me. Otherwise, why it's not worth my time.
Yeah, exactly.
that's how I feel as a reader. That's what that's what I think people should be making those decisions as publishers. But
I mean, the coolest thing that you get to do right now is you get to kind of change people's lives. Even for me, when you take that book, that means a lot. You know, when you have this other guy, I can't remember his name, was it Mike Chin or something like that? Those are important moments for those individuals. So it's a cool thing you get to do.
It is. So, but let's go back to you for a bit.
Sure.
And talk about. I was curious. It seemed like the way that you clearly are somebody who thinks and is outspoken in a way of very particularly about what you think is right, and not fitting a mold at all. It seemed odd to me that you would be a military guy, and you were in not one but two different branches, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying when you said I'm anti-establishment. I'm like, well, hold on, because there's a lot of things I would say I'm not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what was your path to that? Because it's very clear through your writing about it that your choice to get into it was your own. That was something that you wanted to do, and you wanted to go. You wanted to be on the front lines.
When I asked my parents, I'm interested in going to college, my parents said, "And how are you going to do that?"
Well, and the GI Bill allows you to pay for that.
When I was so. Yeah, I mean, I did change. Yeah, but it's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
As most things are.
Well, one of the points that one of the things that you write about in there very specifically is, and it's funny because there's that there's an old Douglas Adams thing about like those who most want to rule are least fit to do so. And there's when you had like made requests to be a frontline guy, like you were told that was like, almost like not what they wanted or something, right?
Crazy.
Yeah,
You're putting in a request to go. I said I want to go to the front lines. I want to go as close to the front lines as possible. And they said no, you're not going then.
Yeah,
because that's not what a healthy person would do. And I was like, but this is why I joined. This exact reason why I joined. And I remember a lieutenant pulled me aside and he was like, I did the same thing, and they're not going to send you if that's the case. He said, if you don't want to go, you have to tell me you don't want to go. And I was like, but then they're not going to send me because I'm going to say I don't want to go. So it's, Joseph Heller's Catch-22 is phenomenal because he nails the military.
But it seems like you apply that same thing to other things that you take on, like when you were talking about doing a spot in Criminal Minds and doing a stunt in that. Just like, it was something that you thought would be cool to do, and so they're like, well, you can do it as long as you don't like get stunt pay or whatever, you don't fill out the paperwork or whatever. And so, I mean, where have you just always had that, oh, this is cool, I'm going to figure out a way to do it kind of thing?
A bit, yeah. I mean, if I want to do something, I just stick with it. Like, I really wanted to teach at a creative writing program. I love to teach. I'm a good teacher. I get fantastic reviews. But when I go for interviews, they'll tell me, you're our second choice or our third choice. And so then I'm like, okay, then I'm just going to make books. And I'm just going to keep doing it. And I was just looking, University of Virginia, which is one of the top programs in the country. And I went there, and they have a list of the alumni who published books, and I think I'm third on the list for most published books by any Virginia writer. And that's my mentality. I just want to do a lot. I want to do good books, but I want to do a lot of them, and before I die. One weird thing I'll say to you too is that with the military, I hide it, but it's pretty obvious from the time of my book. But I was diagnosed with PTSD, and so one of the things about that is they say the average person who's diagnosed with it lives to be about 58. So I don't have that many years left if that's the case. I mean, it does physiologically, it is hard on the body. Sort of things like panic attacks and stuff like that is very hard on your body. And so then I could say if I only did have 9 more years to live or whatever, then then I'm like, the clock's ticking. So I'm like, then it just makes me work that much harder. I'm like, that's just the way that